In our first story tonight, energy analyst Ishmael Ejekumhene has renewed the call for the review of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, which mandates the Ministry of Finance to make allocation from the revenue from the sale of oil. The call follows a research by the Kumasi Institute of Technology and Environment, KITE, which confirms that many of these projects earmarked under the oil fund were not available despite many budgetary allocations. Ishmael Ejekumhene made the call to Joy Business after presenting the findings of the 7-year research by KITE.
The report by the Kumasi Institute of Technology and Environment, KITE, reveals that out of 10 regions in the country, the Western region received the highest project funding from the oil and gas revenue, followed by the Greater Accra region. The 3 northern regions also received the least in terms of budgetary support from the oil and gas revenue, followed by the Central region, Brongahafo, among others. According to the Executive Director, Ishmael Ejekumhene, more than half of the projects that were supposed to be executed with resources as at the time of the research were non-existent. This confirms earlier reports by the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, PIAC, about non-existent projects in some parts of the 3 northern regions. In an interview, Dr. Ejekumhene suggested that some portions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act should be amended to give specific responsibilities to certain state agencies.
We think that there should be some more changes. One of the things that we believe should be changed is we need to be a little bit more precise when it comes to how the Ministry of Finance should report back to us as to how the monies, because they disperse the monies. The reports at the moment, they just dump a list of projects and put it there. Sometimes they don't even have locations. Okay, how is PIAC? I told you how we went to places where there were no projects and we were led to other communities. We didn't find those projects. There has to be some changes. There has to be some clear instructions to the people who are supposed to be doing what they are doing, to know that we won't accept anything. They do well by submitting reports, mandatory reports. The Ministry of Finance always submit those reports when they are presenting the budget, but they lack details, and you can't monitor that. That has to be enshrined either through amendment or through the regulations that they are developing for the law. And if you do that, then we don't just accept. Parliament will just look at it and say, do you meet the criteria, the format that you need to use? It's a strong recommendation that we believe we all need to take seriously. Otherwise, another 10 years we'll be here.
On his part, Chairman of the Public Interest and Accountability Committee, Dr. Stephen Mantiao, couldn't agree more with the suggestion.
In my view, some of the defects in the PRMA can be cured through regulations. Incidentally, the regulations are not in place yet. I'm aware that there are draft regulations, and I happen to have been part of the team that worked on it. So whatever the concerns are, I think we can take another look at the regulations and see how, through regulations, we can address the weaknesses in the law.
The energy think tank concludes that the annual budgetary funding amount has been rendered ineffective because of the decision to thinly spread over several projects, thereby minimizing its potential transformational impact.
The Bank of Ghana says it is yet to establish the costs of recent regulatory actions on some banks said to be in financial distress. Some of these interventions have resulted in the collapse of UT and Capital banks and the taking over of the management of Unibank. Now, all these actions costing the state. In fact, government is planning to issue a $2 billion bond to support the situation. Some industry persons have questioned the impact of this move on the taxpayer. Head of Banking Supervision, Osei JC, however, tells Joy Business the action justifies the cost incurred so far.
Capital Bank and UT Bank, these are 2 banks that were deeply insolvent. Deeply insolvent. You see, when we say a bank is insolvent, what it means is that that bank doesn't have enough assets to cover its liabilities. So the liabilities of the bank put together, the total, is more than the assets of the bank. So you have a situation where the assets of the bank put together is less than the liabilities of the bank, then you have an insolvent bank or an insolvent institution.
Couldn't the Bank of Ghana have done anything about it, looking at the peculiarity of the situation that these banks were going through?
These are banks that had moved from one stage to the other, from undercapitalized, significantly undercapitalized, and now deeply insolvent. So the best decision was to put these banks under receivership, and that's exactly what we did, because all the options were considered, and we also looked at the resolution options available as far as the law is concerned. And a bank that is deeply undercapitalized, the regulator thought that the best decision to take was to take the licenses back and put them under receivership.
Some will say that if it's about solvency, then there were other players in the industry that were facing similar problems and that were given some grace period or given some time to correct that problem. Was that same extended to UT and Capital Bank?
You see, look at solvency from this perspective. Banks that are undercapitalized, banks that are significantly undercapitalized, and banks that are insolvent or deeply insolvent. So, in the case of UT and Capital Banks, they were in a different category. They were deeply insolvent. If you failed to ensure that the right decision was made at the appropriate time, the longer it takes, the more the liabilities exceeds the assets. You get what I mean? And as the liabilities continue to exceed the assets, what it means is that you are accumulating more losses. And at the end of the day, it's going to cost the taxpayer more. So the decision to resolve those two banks was taken at the appropriate time, and it was the right decision.
The city would remain fairly stable to the end of year and would not go beyond the 4-city range. Rand Merchant Bank in its latest forecast said this would be based on strong earnings from exports and high investor interest in the country. There is more in this report.
The forecast should come as good news for businesses that had in the past argued that the city's volatility was one of the biggest challenges threatening their firms. This also made it difficult to plan for their businesses. According to the South African-based Rand Merchant Bank, the city would be fairly stable throughout the year.
So fairly stable, and the reason for this is because we see an influx of foreign direct investment, and we see oil prices remaining quite nicely high, also doubling of oil production in the next year. So we've got a significant influx of dollars into the market, and that is going to build Ghana's foreign exchange reserves. So the central bank will have the ability to keep the currency stable if they have to. And then also towards the end of the year, you always see a bit of volatility into the next year. You've got the COCOBOT syndicated loan, which will help with that. You've got the Eurobond, which can help with that. So essentially, nothing in the next 2 years shows us or makes us believe that there's going to be significant depreciation in the currency.
You mean that it will stay below the 5-city mark?
Yes, I believe it would.
Still within the 4% range. Well, for some, a fairly stable Ghana city could reduce about 15 billion city government's planning to set aside as interest payments for loans. It could also result in prices of goods being fairly stable on the market, since most of the stuff that we consume are imported.
Well, ironically, the World Bank is predicting a fall in Ghana's GDP growth by the end of 2018. The country's gross domestic product for last year hit 8.5%, the highest growth in 5 years, driven by strong performance of the oil and gas sector. But speaking to Joy Business, Chief Economist for the World Bank Ghana, Kobna Jan Kwache, at a presentation of the biannual World Bank report on African economies, projects the strong performance in the petroleum sector cannot be sustained by the close of the year. He says oil production will witness a declining trend in subsequent years and would therefore normalize the growth rate.
We expect 2018 growth to be lower than 2017, what was achieved in 2017. So basically, growth is going to normalize more or less in subsequent years. Now you want to link it with oil, and what we experienced in oil production in 2017 more or less was higher than what we even projected for. So we realized that government projection was below 8%. The World Bank projection was saying below to 8%, but now the provisional numbers is about 8.5. So going into 2018, the oil sector, or in the next few years, the projection for oil is going to go down unless more fields are added. But if you look at the current fields that are being exploited now, oil production is expected to go down by, say, 2025. So, in a sense, more or much more has to be done to the non-oil sector in order to sustain the growth that we are in now.
Meanwhile, the World Bank is warning the country's rising debt stock remains the biggest threat to quickly stabilizing the economy. The country's total debt stock, as at the end of December 2017, stood at 142 billion cedis. This represents 70% of the debt to GDP, which has been described by some economists as not good. Now, the World Bank says the development has implications on credit worthiness and the ability to pay debts on time. Chief economist at the World Bank, Kobna Jan Kwachi, again noting the development calls for some drastic measures.
In essence, the measurement, if you are looking at debt to GDP, has gone down within the year. But the conclusion is still that debt to GDP is still high. And the most current DSA, debt sustainability analysis, conducted with the IMF, indicates that Ghana is still in debt distress. And what that means is that if you look at, or if nothing is done about it, in a very near future, debt levels will not be sustainable. The solutions that were put up by Albert, we are looking at revenue generation, and also we have to look at expenditure. So basically, governments around Africa, which Ghana is also part, have to look at the ways in order to improve their debt to, revenue to GDP, so that there will be enough funds to actually fund all government expenditures.
Ghana would pass the upcoming IMF board meeting for the required funds to be released to the country. That's the prediction coming from economist Professor Godfred Bokpin. The IMF board is expected to start meeting on Ghana on April 30. Now, this is to assess how the country has fared under the program so far. However, there are fears that the country may not sail through the board meeting because of concerns with conditions like increasing taxes. But economist Professor Godfred Bokpin disagrees.
I'm very hopeful that we'll scale the wall. I think that largely we are on track. Not that we have done exceptionally well under the program, but I think that government has shown its commitment to address some of the challenges that have been identified, even at the staff level, in terms of their reports. And therefore, I'm very hopeful that Ghana will be able to scale the wall, largely because the stake is very high. The investment community, even both local and then at the global level, are all interested in how Ghana would perform under the program. And the government itself is fairly aware of what a non-performance will mean for them in our desire to even attract external capital to finance the growth that we want to do.
For you, what should be the approach in dealing with this revenue challenge? Because it's obviously clear that some commitment has been given to the fund on this revenue challenge.
Yes, certainly. I mean, and we are all concerned about our revenue envelope. I mean, but if you look at it from last year, you can see that Ghana has scaled up to some extent, except that we are below our potential. But I think that the media review provides an opportunity, and I agree with the minister, because certain policies were rolled out last year in the budget that was presented last year, taking effect this year. We have to be able to assess how the economy is responding to those policies, including the tax measures or policies that were contained in there. And then that would inform the necessary revisions that has to be made. So, but of course, we are still challenged, because even though we are doing well in terms of oil, we are not getting sufficient revenue.
Let's turn to aviation now, and the Minister for Aviation, Cecilia Dapa, has extended invitation to the private sector to help develop the industry. Now, the Minister was speaking with Joy Business after a courtesy call on her by the Indian and Iranian High Commissioners.
Access to credit has long been a challenge for individuals and businesses in the country. To help overcome this, the Bank of Ghana and other partners are creating awareness on credit systems with a financial literacy and awareness campaign. Speaking to Joy Business at the launch of the campaign, Deputy Registrar of the Collateral Registry at the Bank of Ghana, Fred Esiama Cranton, said the regulator is taking steps to make access to the registry easier.
We are currently in the second phase of the collateral registry redesign project, all right, and as part of the process, we are trying to upgrade our systems, and then the main component is to make sure we improve upon our payment, methods. As it is now, we have two modes of payment. That's the prepaid and then the postpaid. Okay, with the postpaid is basically for the banks or the lending institutions who have accounts with Bank of Ghana, right? But for the prepaid, as you alluded to rightly, people have to walk to Bank of Ghana and they make payments before they bring the receipt to the collateral registry offices for their, login ID to be given to them. It's inefficient. I agree with you. So as part of the program, we are in discussions with NITA. All right. So they will assist us so that moving forward, wherever you may be, you can use your mobile phone. Okay, you can log in onto a collateral registry platform, use your mobile phone to pay for the services of the collateral registry.
On his part, Godfred Kujo from the Financial Stability Department of the Bank of Ghana encouraged individuals to check their credit reports to enhance their eligibility for loans. As a borrower, as an individual, you need to know whether the information that is on you at the Credit Referencing Bureau is accurate. We are dealing with data. Anything can go wrong. And so you don't have to wait till the time when you go to take a loan with a bank and the bank tells you the information we have on you is wrong or is inaccurate. So we entreat everyone to actually visit the Credit Reference Bureau and then obtain a free credit report on yourself. Now, we all have to be aware. Gone are the days where you take a loan from a bank and then you don't pay and then you think that you are gone scot-free. This time it's not so. Because of your non-payment, you will not be able to get a loan with another bank. And so we all have to be aware that there's a system in place to check those who borrow and do not pay. The Collateral Registry and the Credit Reference Bureaus are two financial platforms created by the central bank to promote responsible borrowing and ensure access.
All right, so the report you just heard was about the Bank of Ghana saying that it will soon come up with a system that will make it enable you make searches and make payments to the collateral registry. Time to bring you our interview of the day. And the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana says the one district, one factory model will not be applicable for the pharmaceutical sector, looking at the dynamics involved in the production value chain. Executive Secretary of the Society, Dennis Sena Awiti, adds what will work for is for government to establish a pharmaceutical enclave and offer soft loans for research and drug development. He's worried the withdrawal of 80% of global support for malaria drug importation would cause prices of medicines to shoot up as local manufacturers may not be able to fit in. He spoke with Odilia Ntiamwa ahead of the Health and Wellness Trade Show to be organized by Joy Business.
But you see, the sector is such that we need to produce our own medicines. It will be better. And the quality of medicines from Ghana is trusted, especially in the sub-region and beyond. And so for me, it is one area that I think government should continue to support. But they need patient capital, because if you have to invest 20 million in building a new plant to meet WHO standards, then how long will it take you to pay off that? Because medicines are not just ordinary items of commerce. There has to be a need for them. You can't just sell it anyhow. So we will need patient capital for the people in the industry to be able to manufacture and be able to provide quality pharmaceuticals. And for that, we are grateful that that recognition is there. The president himself said he wants Ghana to become the India of Africa in terms of pharmaceuticals. The Africa pharmaceutical plan for the sector is also there. And so for me, it's a good thing that we need to do.
And so would you say that since the Global Fund redrew, there has been a gap in terms of, one, you said accessibility, and in relation to affordability? Good.
So, of course, if Global Fund was subsidizing to, about 80%, then you realize that if that is withdrawn, then there will be a gap in terms of affordability, which will have implications for accessibility.
All right, and that's all in the lead up to the Joy Business Health and Wellness Trade Show that is coming up in the coming days. Again, watch the space. That'll be it for Business Live. My name is Darryl Call. Stay tuned. Top story will be up at 5:30.